Call the meeting to order. It is now 9:40. A quorum of the board is present. State Board of Education meeting on November 10th, 2015 is called to order. First order of the agenda is approval of the agenda in order of priority. Are there any additional items to add or delete from the agenda?
I move approval.
It's been moved and supported. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item of business is introductions. Marilyn will introduce the members of the State Board of Education, and then we'll ask the audience members to introduce themselves. Marilyn, please.
Good morning. I'll start on my left. The State Superintendent and Chairman of the Board is Brian Whiston. And as we go around the table, John Austin is the President. He resides in Ann Arbor. Cassandra Albrecht will be here in just a second. She's from Rochester Hills. She's the Board's Vice President. Michelle Fecto is standing. She is from Detroit. She's the Board Secretary. Board Member Richard Ziley is from Dearborn. This year's Teacher of the Year is Rick Joseph. He's from Birmingham, Covington. And across the table is the Governor's representative, Karen McPhee. She is unable to join us today. Next to her is Eileen Weiser, Board Member from Ann Arbor. Kathleen Strauss, Board Member from Detroit. Lupe Ramos-Montini, Board Member from Grand Rapids. She's the Board's NASB delegate. It's their association, National Association of State Boards of Education. And next to me is the Board's Treasurer, Pamela Pugh, and she's from Saginaw. I'm Marilyn Schneider. I'm the State Board Executive. And if you would be so kind to introduce yourself, we'd like to know who you are, too. So, Fran, do you want to start?
I'm Fran Luce. I serve as facilitator of the Michigan Special Education Advisory Committee.
Ben Williams, I'm the Legislative Liaison for the Department of Education.
Vanessa Kiesler, Deputy Superintendent, Accountability Services.
Scott Ron, Deputy Superintendent for Administrative and School Support Services.
Deputy Superintendent of Office.
Norma Jean Sass, Deputy Superintendent of Educational Services.
Allison Henry, Special Assistant to the Superintendent.
I'm Marty Ackley. I'm the Director of Public and Governmental Affairs here in the Department of Education.
I'm Marla Moss, Director of the Office of School Support Services.
Stephen Best, Assistant Director of the Office of Education Improvement and Innovation.
Linda Forward, Director of the Office of Education Improvement and Innovation.
Jim Cameron, Social Studies Consultant, Michigan Department of Education.
Melanie Curtis, Staff Common Core in Michigan.
Sandra Kahn, Saginaw, Michigan.
Morning, Paul Salah, Wayne Risa.
Laska Cray, representing Learning Forward, Michigan.
Good morning, I'm Lauren Childs, and I'm also representing Learning Forward, Michigan.
Good morning, Larry Thomas, Oakland Schools.
Terrence Unger, Superintendent of Calhoun Intermediate School District.
Judy Pritchett, Macomb ISD.
Tom Green, MEA.
Lucy McClinnick, Headstart Director for Capital Area Community Services. Caitlin Farrick, Headstart State Collaboration Office Director, Office of Great Start.
Tabitha Caboden, parent.
Sandra Fisher, Parent.
Gary Jensen, ACT Michigan.
Barb Bliss, Parent Action for Healthy Kids.
Good morning, Tawana Simpson, Detroit Board of Education member. Good morning, Vice President of Organization True and a Detroit Public School teacher.
Good morning. My name is William M. Davis. I am the president of TRUE, and I'm also the president of the Detroit Active Retired Employee Association, and I represent people, taxpaying residents in 80 of the 83 counties.
Good morning. I'm Herman Davis, President, Detroit Board of Education.
Good morning. I'm Jason Six, Governmental Affairs, Renaissance Learning.
Good morning, I'm Lindsay Stockford, Senior Michigan State University.
Good morning, I'm Amy Bloom, Oakland Schools.
Good morning, Stacy Woodward from Oakland Schools.
Good morning, I'm Beth Kibitsky, Associate Dean of the College of Education at Eastern Michigan University.
That's everyone. All right, welcome everyone to the State Board meeting. Moment of personal privilege to congratulate some board members. Board members Michelle Fecta, Aline Weiser, and MD Special Ed Director Terry Chapman have been named to the Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley Special Education Task Force. The group has been meeting weekly and will continue to meet throughout the end of the year with the charge of recommending reforms to Michigan's special education system. So we know the group will do some good work. We look forward to the recommendations. Congratulations to Lupe, who has been honored with a scholarship and endowment fund in her name, which was announced at the Hispanic Scholarship Awards Gala on October 14th. Congratulations, Lupe. It was a great evening, fun evening. She even made me get up and dance. Hopefully there's no pictures of that. But congratulations to you, quite an honor. Kathleen Strauss received the Mel Miller Award for Outstanding Social Studies Leader during the Joint Social Studies Conference this past Friday. Congratulations, Kathleen. Discussion items. The first item on today's committee of the whole agenda is presentation on Head Start and early Head Start in Michigan. The federal Head Start program serves thousands of Michigan's most at-risk children each year and is the key partner in the state's early childhood system. Today we'll provide an overview of the Head Start in Michigan, the MD's Head Start Collaborative Office, and the new federal initiatives such as the Early Head Start Child Care Partnerships that focus on providing high-quality, comprehensive services to our children and families. Please. Susan Broman.
Thank you. The State Board of Ed has briefly discussed Head Start over the last couple of years, but we've never had an opportunity to present the entire structure of Head Start in the state of Michigan. As you know, Head Start is one of the significant components of our early childhood system, serving over 40,000 children with comprehensive services. Caitlin?
Hello, my name is Caitlin Farrick, and I'm the Head Start State Collaboration Office Director here at the Department of Education.
And good morning, I'm Lucy McClintock, the Head Start Director for Capillary Community Services, the 4 counties around the capital. Yep.
So today, the goal of today is to provide you with some information, some general overview of the structure and history of Head Start and Early Head Start, as well as some information that is specific to Head Start in Michigan. And then we're going to provide a little bit of information on some federal initiatives that are sort of changing the landscape of Head Start at a national level. And then Lucy is going to provide a local perspective from her program. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about my office, which is an office of one, which is me, and it is the Head Start State Collaboration Office. And my role is not a monitoring role for Head Start. It is rather to increase coordination between Head Start, which is a federal program, and the state early childhood system to improve services for low-income children and families. So to begin, just an overview of Head Start. Head Start and Early Head Start are federal programs that are administered by the Office of Head Start, which is a division of the Administration for Children and Families at the federal level. Head Start and Early Head Start are comprehensive child development programs, and they serve low-income children ages birth through 5 and their families. And in Early Head Start, there are also services for pregnant women. Comprehensive services we'll get into a little bit more, but Head Start really takes a holistic approach to serving children and families, and so it goes beyond what you might think of as early learning as far as working in the classroom with children to really addressing their mental health, social, and emotional development through a variety and array of services both within the agency and through referrals. Head Start is 50 years old this year. It was created as part of President Johnson's War on Poverty initiative, and it was launched initially as an 8-week summer demonstration program for at-risk 4-year-old children and 5-year-old children who are going to be entering kindergarten in the fall to help get them ready for elementary school. And through various expansions and reauthorizations, it became the large program that we have today that serves nearly 1 million children nationally. In the 1994 Head Start reauthorization, Early Head Start was created. And so again, Head Start serves children 3 until kindergarten entry, and Early Head Start serves infants up to age, and toddlers up to age 3. So Head Start, every program has its own eligibility criteria, and Head Start is no different. And so who is eligible for Head Start? Again, it's children 0 to age 5. Children from families with a household income at or below 100% of the federal poverty guidelines are generally eligible for Head Start, and that is the largest eligibility factor. Homeless children are also categorically eligible, regardless of their income, although generally children who are homeless do fall within the income requirements as well. Children in foster care are also eligible, and that is regardless of their foster family's income. Children who receive public assistance, such as TANF, are also eligible, And again, there is a requirement in the Head Start Act that each agency, their enrollment, there must be at least 10% of their enrolled children must have a diagnosed special need. So again, making sure that children with a vast array of needs are served through Head Start and have access to the comprehensive services. So again, some of the highlights of Head Start that make it unique are the comprehensive services. The programs offer families continuous services they need in areas such as health, making sure children have access to physicians, to dentists, have a dental home, are up to date on their periodic screening, nutrition services, and family counseling. There's a lot of emphasis on family engagement in the program. Families are encouraged to participate in parent councils where they are integrated into program governance. They also work with families to help meet their goals. That is, it's a dual generation program. So again, working with parents to help them maybe with food security, to advance their own adult learning, things like that are another focus of the program. Another highlight of the program is that it is a flexible and diverse program as far as model options go. There is center-based, which you would again think of typically as sort of a classroom-based setting. There is home-based, where a home visitor visits the family every week and works with the family and the child within their home. And there is also a family child care model, which is expanding through an initiative we're going to talk about a little bit later. And that's where Head Start or Early Head Start is implemented in a family child care home or a child care center through a partnership. And that's really to sort of meet the needs of parents and their preference as far as where their child will receive care. And I want to provide some information about the number of children that are served in Head Start in Michigan. This is data from the 2013-14 Program Information Report. Each year, at the end of the program year, Head Start agencies are required to report a lot of data to the Office of Head Start, and these reports are then distributed publicly, so you can always access these reports. In 2013-14, over 41,000 children were served in Michigan through Head Start and Early Head Start. That's cumulative enrollment. Over 35,000 of those were children in Head Start. 5,888 were served in Early Head Start. So again, you can see we have many more services for the children 3 to 5 than we do through 0 to 3. 473 pregnant women also received services as enrollees. And so again, the programs will work with these women, and then, their children, when their children are born, they will then generally receive, the child will then receive services. Michigan has 45 total grantees representing diverse entities. Many different types of entities are eligible to be a Head Start grantee. The most common nationally and in Michigan are community action agencies, but also school systems and ISDs are grantees, tribal and county governments, nonprofits, including faith-based organizations. Head Start does have a tribal program and a migrant program as well. So again, meeting the needs of those populations. Some more Michigan-specific data. I want to show you how children enter the program as far as eligibility. Over 70% of all children in Head Start are income eligible. So again, these children are very at risk. Their family income is at or below 100% of the federal poverty line. The next most common form of eligibility in Michigan is receipt of public assistance, such as Pnc or SSI. Homeless status is another sort of larger eligibility criteria. In Michigan, Head Start programs serve more homeless children than the national average. And again, foster care makes up 2.4% of total enrollment in Michigan. And I know as far as special education goes, 10.6% of all children enrolled in Head Start and 17.4% of all those enrolled in Early Head Start had an individualized education program, or IEP, or an IFSP, which is an individual family service plan, which is for the younger population of children. And so this is above, especially for Early Head Start. Early Head Start programs in Michigan serve more children with special needs than the national average. And we're not quite there with Head Start, but we're making improvement all the time. Another thing I want to talk about quickly was the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership. This is a very large federal initiative that's received bipartisan support from the federal government. Essentially, the goal of this grant, which came out, which the first grants were awarded the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, is to implement Early Head Start in family child care homes and child care centers. to provide continuity of care for at-risk infants and toddlers in these settings, and to expand full-day, full-year options. Essentially, the grantees partner with child care centers and family homes to implement early Head Start in their business, with the goal of increasing quality for child care. And Lucy's program, Capillary Community Services, was one of the grantees in Michigan. Again, services are provided through age 3 with this grant, which is a bit of a departure from typical age requirements for Head Start, but again, really focusing on continuity of care, at which point a child ages out would be able to enter either Head Start or GSRP or another pre-K program. The model also encourages layering of funding, so again, utilizing child care subsidy with the partnership dollars supporting quality. There's been a movement at the federal level to try to more align child care and Head Start, so that since they serve similar populations as far as income guidelines, to really make it more accessible for families to receive full day, full year care, which many people need. In Michigan, we received 5 grants, and they are listed here. And again, one of them is Lucy's program, Capital Area Community Services, which she received a $1.7 million grant. In total, Michigan received $14.4 million, which will serve over 850 children in centers and homes. And that may not sound like a lot of children for that amount of money, but infant and toddler care is very, very expensive, especially full day, full year.
Is that 1 year? What's the time frame?
It is a 5-year grant project.
Okay, thank you.
And so now I'm going to turn it over to Lucy to talk about her program.
So once again, I'm Lucy McClinnick, and I'm the Head Start and Early Head Start Director. I work for Capillary Community Services, which is a community action agency. We serve children in Clinton, Eaton, Ingham, and Shiawassee County. Approximately 70% of our children are in Ingham County. We serve 1,457 preschool children, and you can see the array of services that we provide, but I want to draw your attention to 28 blended classrooms, and that is funding from Michigan Great Start Readiness Program, blends with Head Start to provide a 7-hour program, and that's available for 448 children. I think it's important to note that when we talk about 100% of poverty, not everyone knows what those figures really look like. So for a family of 4, that's $24,250. In our program, over 50% of the families are living below 50% of poverty, or $12,125. In our particular program, 70% of our families are single-parent homes. Early Head Start, you can see, is much smaller than preschool Head Start. We serve 184 children. Again, with Early Head Start, the reason why it's so expensive is the maximum class size is 8 children. And so we have 7 classrooms that have 8 children in them. We like to loop our children, so we have an infant room, and then we actually have 2 infant rooms and then 5 toddler rooms. So they move forward with their teacher from infancy through toddler 1 and toddler 2 before they move on to Head Start. We also have 13 home visitors, and probably a unique model is that 3 of those home visiting services are with 3 partners. So Community Mental Health, Ingham County Health Department, and Shiawassee Intermediate School District. And in our Head Start, our Early Head Start program, 20% of the children have coordinated services with Early On. Again, unique to our program is we have 24 children that are in the McV, which stands for Maternal Infant Early Childhood Home Visiting Program. It's a federal home visiting program. our particular model uses Early Head Start as their model of service delivery. And as Caitlin mentioned, we have one of the new Early Head Start Child Care Partnership grants for 120 children in Ingham, Eaton, and Shiawassee counties. We have services in 6 homes and 11 centers. Again, we're targeting families that need full year care, those that are working or going to school. And in our model, they must be participating with DHHS child care subsidy or have an additional scholarship. So we are using the layering funding to provide quality services in either a home or a center. All of the service deliveries are in licensed centers. They are either in the STAR system or are moving toward their self-assessment to move into the STAR system. The grant supports the expansion of slots. So as Caitlin mentioned and I mentioned, there are many fewer slots for infants and toddlers. And so one of the targets for this program was to expand slots to children to enhance the quality in the center, but also to get maybe your more highly or expensive, high-quality centers to take children that are from low-income families. So we have provided already a variety of services, including fencing in a backyard, purchasing cupboards for them so they can store their supplies, make sure that their site is a safe place for children. We also have taken very seriously improving the quality in terms of the caregivers' professional development. So of the mix of centers and homes, 65 caregivers have signed up to pursue an infant toddler CDA credential. We don't do this alone. In each Head Start program, you are challenged with finding community partners, and we are very fortunate in that we have MSU in our back pocket, as well as Lansing Community College. And so we have lab classrooms with both MSU and Lansing Community College, and it brings in a number of interns as well as research projects. We've had a 15-year partnership with WKAR and their Ready to Learn program, which has provided parent education as well as professional development for teachers and a number of children's books. And so when we connect public television to a book, it promotes literacy in the home. And last year, through a variety of partnerships, we gave away over 15,000 books. We encouraged family literacy, reading to children every night. You can't read to your children if you don't have books in your home. So that's been a huge priority for our program. And I'd like to highlight Pnc Bank down at the bottom. They have a Grow Up Great initiative, and they match volunteer hours with dollars, and we've received several $1,000s, not to mention many volunteers in quite a few of our centers to help with family fun nights, to do gardening, to paint, to be used as we can to improve our program. We do focus on school readiness, and we have developed a set of school readiness skills that was developed in conjunction with early childhood staff as well as kindergarten teachers in our variety of settings across the 4 counties. We measure these school readiness skills 2 times a year, and then as the children transition out of our program,
A transition summary goes with the child, with parents' release to the kindergarten teacher. So it tells a variety of things besides where the child is in each of the developmental domains. It also tells about the child's attendance, because we know habits for good attendance begin in preschool, and so we track children's attendance very closely and do everything in our power to make sure that children are in school every day. This is a graph of our outcomes. We use Teaching Strategies Gold, which is connected to the creative curriculum. And you can see the social emotional, gross motor, fine motor, language, cognitive literacy, and mathematic gains. So you can see where the children come into our program and then where we move them to by the end of the year. And this is balanced against widely held expectations for their age. We promote parent engagement through a variety of activities. Every family gets a booklet called Welcoming Families on the Road to School Readiness. So we lay out right away whether you are in an early Head Start program, a child care partner, or a preschool program. This is where we hope your child will be in preparation for starting kindergarten. The links sheets in the middle are weekly activity sheets, and we have them for infants and toddlers. We have them in Spanish. They are locally designed. They have parenting tips. The back side has recipes as well as songs and finger plays for the parents to work on with their child at home. We know beginning in kindergarten, the expectation is that there will be some time set aside every night for children to, for lack of a better word, do homework. And so we want to encourage that time beginning in preschool. And then we're quite aware of this summer fade out, and so we produce a summer activity packet, which again has monthly calendars of activities and suggested field trips and experiences for children. And then here is just a snapshot of our beautiful children. We really feel school readiness is about curiosity, an engaged mind, and an eagerness to learn.
Thank you. So very briefly, I wanted to go over the activities of my office and the purpose and goals. And so again, I am the Head Start State Collaboration Office Director, and essentially my role is to facilitate multi-agency and public and private partnerships between Head Start and the state and local systems to assist in building early childhood systems and again expanding access to the comprehensive services that both Lucy and I spoke about to low-income children and families. Again, Head Start is a federal to locally funded program with no oversight by the state. There used to be a little bit more siloing between the federal system and the state system, so really working to bring those systems together, given the number of children that Head Start serves across the country and in Michigan. And my office is mandated through the Head Start Act. And as you can see, this is language from the Head Start Act. I won't read it. But essentially, each state must have a Head Start State Collaboration Office Director, and they must have a full-time position of sufficient authority to ensure effective collaboration. And grants are awarded by the Office of Head Start, similarly to how they're awarded to grantees who provide services to children. And I just included this graphic, which I'm sure many of you have seen before. This sort of illustrates the executive order of 2011 that created the Office of Great Start. And so my office was previously housed, I was not there, but at the Department of Human Services, and it was brought into the Office of Great Start in 2011 through the governor's executive order. And so I wanted to show this to sort of show where I'm situated. And again, I'm very lucky in that I am able to work with a number of key partners in the early childhood system as far as the state child care administrator, the directors overseeing early on, and the Great Start Readiness program. And so again, that is a benefit that not every Head Start state collaboration office has in other states. So these are the priorities that are set by the Office of Head Start for my office. One of those is to partner with the state child care system. Again, I'm lucky that the state child care administrator is housed in the Office of Great Start also. A major emphasis of my work this year is to work with the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership grantees. And so I've been convening these grantees to talk about statewide issues. The child care system and Head Start system have a lot of differences, and so trying to bring those together to make the program successful and to facilitate the layered funding model. Again, there's a lot of emphasis at the federal level now through their potentially pending reauthorization for data collection and making data-driven decisions for the programs and for children. And so one of the projects I work on at the department is the Race to the Top Early Learning Challenge data work. We're working on some pilots to integrate Head Start data into the state system. Since Head Start isn't mandated to report their data to the state, we're working on integrating that system so we have a clearer picture of early learning in the state of Michigan. And then again, supporting access to professional development, do a number of activities around that, participate in a number of work groups, bringing quality online learning to the state as far as for early childhood providers. And then collaborating with the quality rating improvement systems is another priority from the Office of Head Start. And so I work with the Great Start Quality Core Team. Many Head Start grantees and early Head Start grantees do participate in the Great Start to Quality system, and most of those who do participate are at a 4 or 5 star rating. So those are the 2 highest levels in our quality rating improvement system. And again, many of our Head Start programs do partner with the Great Start Readiness program, and it is a requirement that they participate in the QRIS system. Another priority is working with the state school system, so essentially working with state pre-K and other kindergarten system to improve transitions. And again, as Lucy mentioned, we do have a lot of blended slots of Head Start and GSRP in the state, over 5,000, so it is a distinct partnership. And then there are some regional and state priorities which are sort of amorphously defined but include things such as health, working with homeless families to improve services, coordination with the migrant and tribal program as well. And so this was a very quick overview of our system, but if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. My information is below.
Anybody have any questions? Certainly. Oh, go ahead, Pam.
Thank you for this presentation. This is great. And from my understanding, Head Start at one time had a lot of family support and a lot of was meant to drive parents to be really engaged almost to the point where they should be able to elevate through the system and be a part of Head Start and the workforce. And it was part of workforce development. How are we promoting that?
I can speak to that. We have an entry-level position in our program, actually 68 entry-level positions, and that's a program assistant. That's a part-time position, and the majority of those positions are filled with Head Start parents. Then that leads to them becoming a full-time employee as a teacher assistant, and we have some that have worked their way up to being a teacher as well.
That's awesome. And then hopefully from a state level, we're really promoting that across the board.
Yep, that is definitely a large part of the program is the family engagement, both the state level and the national level, really focusing on bringing parents into the system. You know, similar to what Lucy does, that happens at many programs as far as trying to help parents meet their career goals. Part of the program really focuses, again, on making goals for the children, but also on goals for the families. So whatever your goals might be as far as education, securing housing, food assistance, etc. And there are really great stories everywhere about families who entered Head Start and started working for the program. Many directors and also people who work at the federal and state level started as Head Start parents. And so that's something that's really wonderful. And again, there are a lot of research studies that do really tout the benefits of Head Start, not only for the children, but for the families, people able to access education, jobs they wouldn't have without their child in Head Start.
my grandmother who lived in Mississippi was one of the recipients or one of those people who moved through the system in that way. And then the other thing is expulsion. We know that the expulsion rates for African Americans especially are very high at even these levels. And then how are the programs that we're implementing, how are we going to help to improve that?
So Head Start, firstly, Head Start has a no suspension or expulsion policy. And so really, that is something that is not allowed in the program. And as far as at the state level, the Office of Great Start, myself and some other staff within the office are working on creating a suspension and expulsion policy for early childhood, which we're hoping will eventually be shown to all of you, which really focuses on bridging the gaps.
February.
Okay, and then hopefully with the new program with the child care facilities, that will help with that as well.
I think the other piece to that is that many of the children that struggle in preschool have challenging behaviors. And so within Head Start, we employ 7 full-time mental health specialists. And so we're working with parents as well as the children on appropriate discipline, and we're trying to bridge the gap. In many cases, this is the first time the child has been away from home. It's the first time the child has maybe been said no to. So there's a variety of things that go into play in terms of building social skills.
Thank you.
Michelle? And then Kathleen?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. One is, I'm just curious about, I think it's great to employ the parents and do that kind of work. I'm just wondering what the general pay is and if there's opportunities for scholarship, because I've heard that the pay of folks who work in this industry is not quite where it should be. So I'm just wondering your challenges around that, and how do people afford to advance? Are there mechanisms or scholarships available for them to advance their education?
Every Head Start program has not only base funding for their grant, but they also have a training and technical assistance grant as well. And in our program, that's over $1 million. And so we use that money to pay for staff to take college courses, both at the associate level and at the graduate level. Our program also participates with TEACH, which is federal money that provides scholarships and helps with tuition as well as books. So, but yes, the salaries are very low compared to public school teachers.
And I also had another question. I know you said you hired mental health folks to come in and work with the children and the staff, and I think that's great. I'm wondering how universal that is, and how. And one of the things that that I'm working with others to explore with the Special Ed Task Force and is to bring in consultants early on, especially kids with the Applied Behavior Analysis program, which is now funded. There's some funding to make sure that that's affordable, but it's really critical when you have kids with developmental disabilities, autism included, to get early this therapy early, and it's sometimes getting, especially people who don't have a lot of money, to have them have access to that in a way that for a sustained period of time, and and not have to deal with transporting and juggling. If that is something that is considered, it could be considered to partner with organizations to provide something like ABA in Head Start or early Head Start. Is that something that's considered, or if it has been considered, could it be considered?
Well, first of all, our mental health staff all are MSWs, and they all have experience with young children. And we don't claim to be physicians, so we do refer out to the community for
diagnosis, and treatment and what have you. But again, our doors are open, so the children are being served in our classrooms. So we need strategies and help with making that child be as successful as they can in a mainstreaming experience. We're fortunate that we also have Michigan State University, and I know they have just recently developed an autistic preschool classroom, and we are actually going to observe in that classroom and observe their strategies and what have you. So the school districts that recognize and provide quality programs are really, I hate to say hit or miss across our 4 counties, because many people do not want to diagnose a child at age 3 or age 4. And so we're providing the services as best as we can.
Yeah, okay. So it might be something we're considering, I'd suggest, because the earlier the diagnosis and the treatment, the more successful.
And there are a number of Head Start staff across the state who have infant mental health endorsements, and there are a number of partnerships with Early On and other programs centered on the 0 to 3 population.
Right.
And so again, as Lucy said, though, it does sort of vary from program to program as far as what resources are available in that area, partnering with U of M system and other sorts of hospitals as well. And some grantees, not in Michigan necessarily, but are, I was a teacher in a program that was housed within a mental health type clinic setting, and so we had a lot of mental health services, and so it really does vary. But again, a number of different kinds of entities can be Head Start grantees, and some of those are federally qualified health centers, clinics, et cetera.
One of the things the department has understood is that there are not enough resources to support Early On for the types of services that are needed. And so that's one of our concerns across the whole 0 to 3 age range is getting more funding for services to meet the needs of kids.
All right, Kathleen, and then hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation. It's really good to hear the overall story about Head Start now, and I know it seems to be doing a good job. But I wanted to ask about the graph on Head Start child outcomes. So I want to make sure I understand it. It's on page 20.
It's my graph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There.
I just want to make sure, the top one is the fall, and the next one is winter, and the next is spring. So does that mean the percentages of children within this widely held expectations increases if they go the whole year? Is that what that means?
The majority of our program is not full year, so no, this would be September to May.
Oh, but, okay. So the dark one with when the social emotional is 95%, that would be from September to May?
Correct.
And the others are shorter periods of time, so if they go the whole school year, so to speak, they come very close to 100%.
They do.
It's really quite remarkable.
They do. I should caution you. Widely held expectations is a wide range.
What does that mean?
So, for example, it does not necessarily mean that a child is ready for school.
Oh.
So, for example, in the area of writing, you're going to take into consideration children that are scribbling as well as those that are writing their name. And they are still going to fall within widely held expectations. But we know that a child that is scribbling is not going to be ready for kindergarten. So again, we do another cut of all of those scores based on kindergarten expectations. So we have another cut.
That's different from widely
That is different than widely held expectations. So the first cut is widely held expectations. You want every child to be within the range for their age group. But then you want to go further than that and make sure that they are ready for kindergarten.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate the information and the data. Next item on the Committee of the Whole is presentation on the 2015 Michigan Student Test of Education Progress, MSTEP. On October 27th, the MDE released the statewide assessment results for the first MSTEP assessment. These results from the new, more rigorous assessment measure Michigan standards and provide us a new baseline from which to understand the current readiness of Michigan students. Today's presentation will focus on the statewide results. I also want to thank the educational community, the business community for working with us to raise the standards. If we do want to become a top 10 performing state, we needed to raise our standards, and whenever you do that, it causes concerns because it looks like we've taken a step backwards in our results. And we didn't really take a step backwards. We're just saying it takes more to meet the standards. And I know we did this back in 2010 and 11, and very quickly students and schools adjusted and met the higher standards, and we believe that will happen again. So with next steps, additional results will be released in the coming weeks. And with that, Vanessa Kiesler, Deputy Superintendent Accountability Services, will give us an update.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me here today to talk about the results from the inaugural MSTEP release. Before I get going, I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge and thank the team here at the department. Andy Middlestead is our assessment director. He's actually in DC right now learning about federal peer review guidance, so he couldn't be here to share in the presentation, but he's led his team downstairs through a really difficult year. And while we wouldn't point to this year as the example for how we want to do things going forward, we also, the team here did a really remarkable job in getting through this transition year. And we appreciate the partnership of the field and the whole education community with us, the partnership of other offices. But just wanted to thank Andy, Pat King, Peg Manning and OSI, Dave Judd, and the whole team downstairs. We have a very small team to do what they do, and they've been working around the clock for a long time on a lot of things. So thanks to them, and thank you to all of you for your support as we move through this process. As you know, this year was the first year of our new MSTEP assessment. As Superintendent Whiston said, the assessment was actually not the key part. The key part was this was the year that we fully implemented our higher, more rigorous college and career ready standards. So standards are what we expect Michigan students to know and be able to do. And if we want to be a globally competitive state, a top 10 state in 10 years, we have to set high expectations for our students. And those new standards, which you all adopted in 2010, were fully implemented this year. So it is an exciting time for Michigan to be more aggressive about what we ask our students to know and be able to do. And what this assessment does is help us see once a year to certify learning, to understand, is this happening or is it not? This year represents a new baseline, and as Superintendent Whiston said, in past experience, we have seen that when we raise the bar of expectations on Michigan students, they do jump over that bar. The education community supports them, and that happens. So we expect to see these results increase going forward. With that, I will jump right into the results. You have probably seen these in different press releases, and I know we provided them to you in other formats, but wanted to discuss them briefly. These are the statewide aggregates, and again, remember that it is in English language arts and mathematics that we had these new, more rigorous career and college ready standards. We have consideration of new science standards and new social studies standards before this board right now. And so the assessment was new in ELA and math, but the science and the social studies assessment was very similar to previous assessments, still the old standards, and still the previous cut scores. So let me call a couple things out on this chart. In ELA, you see we range between 50% proficient, right around 50% proficient in all grades and tested, or all grades. 2 points to make on this. One is that it is not acceptable for Michigan to have only 50% of its students proficient in ELA. So we know that that is something that needs to change for Michigan students to have the kind of opportunities post K-12 that we want them to have. But also the fact that Michigan took kind of a stepwise approach with the support of the board, raised the cut scores back in 2011 after we adopted the new standards in 2010, helps us be in a better position than some other states that have seen their this was a transition year for many states to full implementation of their career and college ready standards. So some states have seen a much more substantial change from previous, but Michigan's taken
again, with the support of this board, taken a stepwise approach to get here. The number of students who are proficient in ELA, with the investment that we're making into early literacy and the full implementation of these standards, I think that we have a lot of things in place to improve the performance of students here. In mathematics, you see that they range from 49% proficient in grade 3 and 41% proficient in grade 4, and then in the 30% proficients as you go down the grades. One thing I'd like to call out here is that you can see that grade 3 and grade 4 had a higher percent of students proficient than the upper grades. And those are the classes, the cohorts of students for which they always received instruction under the new, more rigorous standards. So we think that's some good evidence that, again, raising the expectation of Michigan students for the entirety of their school career has already yielded some results. And we'll expect to see that both as the standards are more fully implemented in the upper grades and as those better prepared students move through the upper grades, I think we can expect to see an achievement increase there. In science, we only assess in science once per grade level, so grade 4, 7, and 11. And similarly, we do that with social studies, grade 5, 8, and 11. In science, 12% of Michigan students were proficient in grade 4, 23% in grade 7, and 29% in grade 11. Those numbers are very low, considering the impact on STEM and STEAM, or the emphasis on STEM and STEAM, but they are very similar to last year. So when Michigan in 2011 adopted more rigorous cut scores in science, we had a much lower number of students proficient because we're really setting a very high bar, career and college ready bar for science knowledge. And so this is potentially an area of focus for the state. And then social studies, 22%, 30%, and 44%. And again, I know this board is grappling right now with new standards, different standards, higher expectations. And so that would be a piece of helping raise these scores is raising the standards for Michigan students. Just to show you the breakdown, because we have 4 performance levels, it's not just proficient, not proficient. There's actually advanced, proficient, partially proficient, not proficient. So this is the ELA. Red is not proficient, yellow is partially proficient, green is proficient, and blue is advanced. Not a lot to call out here. It is a pretty even split. You do see in the 3rd grade and the 4th grade, there's a few more students in the advanced category than in some of the upper grades. Again, those students have received instruction under ELA, or under new ELA standards the entire time. But, just to kind of see how it breaks down. In mathematics, this is how it looks. You can see as you go up the grades, there's more students in the not proficient category versus the partially proficient category. And that obviously is something we need to continue to address. As students go up the grades in mathematics, we seem to be losing more students from that final percent proficient. So what can we do about mathematics instruction as we move up through the grades? This is in science. You see a little bit of a different trend where more students become proficient as you go up the grades. So thinking about, again, I think though the conversation with science needs to continue to be around what standards are we driving toward, and then the assessments will follow when appropriate. And social studies, this is the breakdown of the 4 performance levels. A big range in 5th grade that are partially proficient, so would be, on track hopefully to move toward proficient as you go up, and you see that partially proficient shrink in grade 8 and grade 11.
Can you go back to the science slide? Because
Yep.
I think you said that more students become proficient as they go along, but I'm seeing the opposite on that. Oh, I see. Well, no, yes, I'm sorry, I'm reading it backwards, sorry.
Okay, I was like,
I read it backwards the first time too, so I get it.
Okay.
Well, yeah, so the red gets smaller.
Yeah,
and the
yes,
green
we get it.
doesn't.
Thanks.
We also released the ACT scores. Remember, this was the final year that students took the ACT, and this year they took the entire ACT, then they took the M-STEP, then they took the work keys. Michigan has they have 2 things in statute that set us apart from a lot of other states. We require a college entrance exam, a state-provided college entrance exam, which is an equity and access issue and something our state should be proud of offering to Michigan students. And we also require a work skills assessment, so it's work keys. In this year's M-STEP administration, the ACT was not aligned to our standards, so we had to give the entire college entrance exam and then an assessment aligned to our standards. Moving forward, SAT is aligned to the standards, so we will be able to give the SAT for the ELA and math portions of the M-STEP. So students will take the SAT, then science, then social studies, and work keys, and be done. And that actually cuts 8 hours of testing time off to high school, which we're very excited about. These were the scores on the ACT. These are the average composite scores in the different, yep.
And each of these is out of 36?
Yes.
Thank you.
Average composite score, so in all subjects, 19.9, English, 19.4, that's a little bit up from 2014. Mathematics, 19.5, that's very similar to 2014. Reading, 20.1, that is, again, a slight increase from 2014. Science is 20.1, and writing is 6.7. Oops, wrong button. And then, as the superintendent mentioned, the next steps are to release additional data. So this year, with the various challenges with the first year of assessment, we chose to take a staggered approach to release. If we had some data, get it out, and then get more data out. The field has been very supportive of that with us, and we appreciate that. We released the statewide aggregates in the student data file on October 27th. We are very close to releasing individual student reports. And then parent reports will start to ship. In a few weeks, we'll turn on school and district aggregates. So this is, percent of students proficient in a certain school or district for districts to review in an embargoed environment. And then we'll turn them on publicly in My School Data 2 weeks after they're released to the districts. And then the final step will be to release student growth percentiles to the districts. And we want to do that as its own release so we can do some good training, technical assistance, and communication, because this will be the first time that people have seen this growth measure from state assessment data. And finally, this is our infographic that talks about where we're trying to go and where we've been. And again, our journey to a top 10 in 10 state certainly has been, pieces of it have been underway for a number of years, starting with the adoption of more rigorous ELA and math standards in 2010, and then this year the new assessment. Hopefully we will have new science and social studies standards moving forward, and then we can bring online assessments that measure those standards, and we'll get to a place where 85% of our students are on track for career and college ready by 2025. This is our goal. This is what we're working toward. And with that, Superintendent.
So as you know, we also have a committee of people who are looking at assessments to understand what assessments we need in the classrooms, what assessments districts need, and what we as a state need in assessment. So there will be more to come on an overall system look at what the assessments are needed at each of those levels. So look forward to that in the next few months as well. Any questions? All right, I'm going to jump at that opportunity. The next item on the committee of the whole agenda is an update on the process for social studies standards. The presentation will provide an overview of the feedback received as well as modifications to the standards based on the feedback. We'll also provide an update on the process for gaining additional feedback based on the modifications made to the standards. And I do want to congratulate our team for the work and accessibility that they have been, both in science and social studies standards. A long process to get people's input. I will say on social studies standards, we still have some work to be done. We're going to embark on a little bit of a new process here, which you'll hear about, and continue to work on these standards and see if we can't get them in a place that we can bring them forward. A focus group will be convened to provide feedback on the modifications to the standards, allow for additional public comment period before making a final decision on whether to bring forward changes or not. So with that, we have Norma Jean Sass, Deputy Superintendent Educational Services, Linda Forward, Director, Educational Improvement and Innovation, and Stephen Best, man that does everything.
Just setting up the computer this.
Good morning. Linda Forward is here to, as Brian said, kind of update you on our social studies journey, where we've been, where we are right now, and where we're going to go.
Thank you. Good morning. I kind of appreciate Vanessa's infographic with the steps, because I feel like that's where we're working towards with the social studies standards. And it certainly has been a process, and we are making progress, but I think we have more work to do. Before we go down this road, though, I do want to acknowledge Greg Dion and Ruth Ann Hodges and Jim Cameron, in addition to Steve Best, who have done monumental work on all of this. And without them, we would probably not even be here. The other thing that I've learned over this process is that in updating the board and in talking about curriculum, instruction, standards, all of the pieces that go into any set of coursework, we have conflated, at least for the field, the differences between standards, curriculum, and instruction, and they see them as intermingled, and they are indeed pieces that work together, but what we're dealing with right here are just the standards. And that's the role of the state board, as you very well know, to adopt those. So what we're looking at right now is social studies standards. Just as a sort of a history lesson, speaking of social studies, the current standards that we have right now were approved in 2007. There are two sets of them, the K-8 grade level content expectations and then the high school content expectations. Each of those documents was then followed with a set of support resources, grades that were grade specific, and also we went through the course and credit requirement tools for support, because remember, at least at the high school level, we have to marry this up with the Michigan Merit Curriculum. So that's our current situation. What we would like to do, at the request of the field, and this is through conversations that have been had over several years, is get to a fewer, clearer, and higher set of standards. So fewer and clearer, let's be a little more precise in what we want, what we expect teachers to look for in their students, and what are the expectations for the students. And then higher, what is the rigor? How can we get to a greater rigor? And then I would take you down to the third bullet. These standards are not brand new, redone standards, but a revision of our existing standards. So it's not as if we started from scratch and said, so what would we like to do? How do we revise the existing set of standards? And our goal in the instruction world was to align this to the arc of inquiry that's held in the C3 framework. Public information and feedback. We've had a wonderful time traveling the state. I shouldn't say we. I stayed home. The team went home. Through 12 field sessions, public information sessions, gathering information, feedback. There were over 600 people who attended. In addition to that, our team has presented to conferences and other meetings across the state, such as the assessment groups, the school improvement facilitators, others. We have met with 46 legislators and the governor's team, and we have met with several of the social studies education community. In addition to that, you are aware that we have a public comment survey that goes out, and we had over 450 respondents to that survey. So what did they have to say? First, I would apologize. The bars, so you'll understand what they mean. The topmost line there is 80%, moving then down by 20%. So you've got a 20% mark, a 40, a 60, and an 80. So roughly 75 to 78% of those who commented or gave us feedback support adoption. Around 30% offered some assistance to us on working with the standards and implementing them. We had general questions from about 10%. There were questions about implementation, which tended to be the largest question from educators. So how are we going to do this? Once we get it adopted, then what? And once again, that's another step. First we get the standards, and then, as you will recall, when we put the timeline out for you, there is about a 5-year implementation phase-in for standards. And so Vanessa just spoke to that with the English language arts and mathematics standards. We finally, for the first time, assessed those, and we adopted those in 2010. So we spent 5 years approximately getting into those. Well, we've just moved ahead here. I must have pushed the wrong button. General standards concerns, we did have around 18%. There were some concerns about the standards, and around 22% had specific standards concerns. Well, that raised our concern that perhaps we have not addressed all of the issues that need to be addressed when you have more than 20% of the respondents having some specific concerns with standards. hence our next steps as we go forward. So in response to the feedback, those who support adoption, we are delighted and we thank them for their participation, and we'll move forward. Where we had offers of assistance, we do want to follow up with those people and get their specific input and get their support, as MDE and GELN may be an acronym that is new to you, the General Education Leadership Network, which is the assistant superintendents, thereabouts, that kind of title, in the ISDs, who are responsible for curriculum and instruction. And it is to those folks that we turn for support to the schools, because they are closer to the schools, and we quite frankly cannot develop curriculum here. Where we had concerns about general questions about implementing and standards, we are looking at a response to that. It takes a variety of forms. It could be an FAQ. We could need a work group to address some concerns. We may need solutions via partners or legislation. And then, of course, we usually do put out guidance and information about the standards. So those are some of the avenues that we would follow for the concerns that are existing.
Getting more suggestions as we speak.
Just calling in something right now. Well, that might be, though, John, that might be a specific standard concern. And where we did have specific standard concerns, and I would use the constitutional democracy, constitutional republic example that we've experienced already, our team looked at those and worked with the review committee and the developing committee in order to decide, would we take that concern and address it and make a change, or would we say, well, no, that's really an instructional issue and not really a standards issue, which it turned out to be several times, and then, or would we say, no, that's flawed, that the thinking, we cannot address it the way that the respondent was suggesting that we do it. And you have an example of that on the next page. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time there, but it shows what the issue is, what are the data, what is the data, the pros and the cons around those, and what are the changes to the standards that may or may not be made. If you look in the middle one, it's more about instruction. And if you look at the top one, it is our American Constitution, our American democracy, our American Republic, Constitutional Republic. And while we have American democracy and American Republic in here, in some cases it reads better that way. There are other places where it's a constitutional democracy changing to a constitutional republic. So that's how we're handling all of those. So who responded to the survey? That was the online survey. You will note that a large percentage of the respondents were educators. Over 53% of them were teachers. What I found very exciting was that 18% of the respondents were parents, identified themselves as parents, and you only got one choice, and 13% as interested citizens. So we had a good balance of people coming online to respond to the survey. Those who were teachers or educators, we asked them about their experience in education. A pretty balanced respondent group with a leaning toward the more experienced teachers weighing in. So asking them about the perception of the standards update, how do they feel about it overall on the survey, you'll see that folks believed, 74% of the folks believed that the new standards would better prepare our students for application of content, knowledge, and skills. However, 26% are not so sure about that, and so that's something to be looked at and considered. Overall, the perception of the standards, would they either improve or hold harmless? Would they hold harmless our ability to serve students? And pretty close to 80% agreed that yes, these would be an improvement. However, one grade band, 6 to 8, there is concern. 67% of the respondents thought there was an improvement, which leaves us with a fairly sizable percentage that are not so sure that that's the case. Some of the concerns that were also expressed were around implementation of the standards, getting enough professional development to them, and some of these changes may require changes in staffing or certification. We've talked to you about that earlier, and we would get into depth with that once we had the standards and we would move through our 5-year implementation. Now, onto the instructional component. I'm going to label it very clearly going forward. Onto the instructional component. One of the drivers for this change was a new document that was put together, and it's called the C3 Framework. It's the arc of inquiry, once again, asking students to take on some of the issues that are raised in our country and address them through an arc of inquiry. In other words, what is the fact there? And have them devise their theory, find the support for it, and defend it, which also brings in the nice piece about utilizing English language arts skills, and rationale, being able to express their opinions. So primarily, we had good support, and you will note that well, I'm not going to give you percentages here, but you'll note that a large number of respondents are already implementing the arc of inquiry in their classrooms. They found it to be useful. So then you look at, is the C3 resource of instruction useful? And overall, they see it to be useful or helpful. One of the nice pieces in here comes back around to that English language arts literacy connection, because students have to be able to read, write, speak, and listen in order to defend their points of view, as well as to articulate and hear other points of view and make decisions based on all of those points of view. And finally, where are we going? Brian noted that we're going to move forward from here, and we developed responses and recommendations to the feedback and provided you with a summary of the feedback. We also provided a very large, no, I'm sorry, I'm off topic there. So provided a lot of feedback information to everybody. December, we are hoping to convene another group of external stakeholders and have them take a look at the standards and provide information. We would hope to provide an update to you in January and go out for public comment and hopefully come back in February. I will tell you that that is a very aggressive timeline. And so we may find as we get into the work that we need to extend that. But the team's hope would be that they could come back to you in February. We're going to try. But if we're not back here until March or April, I hope you'll understand we want to do a thorough job and get it right and not rush things. So that's our next step. We are bringing in social studies experts, parents, concerned citizens, teachers across the board. We are also bringing in at least two people who served on the development of the 2007 model of this, who then can weigh in from a point of view of this is what we had and this is what you're taking that one out? Why would you ever take that one out? Maybe you need to put it back in. So we'll bring in that voice as well. That's where we are today.
So again, I want to thank the team for a lot of hard work, good work, a lot of opportunities for people to comment and share their thoughts, concerns, and problems. But with that said, I think we admit we have a lot of work to do. We're not going to rush it. We're going to get it right. And if we get it right, then we'll bring it back to you for adoption. If we don't, then we may have some other comments to make to you. But lots of work to do here. John?
This occurred to me, this social studies and history are so different from the other disciplines in terms of getting it right. Meaning, in math, someone does a proof and others check it and we agree on what it means. I was just reading about Einstein's theory of relativity, which was about 100 years, very challenging, but others check and say, my goodness, that really is the case. And in science, you do empirical evidence and people agree on what we think it means. Social studies and history are so different because there are very different interpretations among about what's important, emphasis, even interpretation of what happened back then, that I think you can never get it right, with due respect to Brian. You will have different perceptions of, are we teaching enough about the importance of our founding fathers and what they represented? Or are we needing to pay and finally attention to our native peoples and their experience? You can have folks saying we need to provide new emphasis on the civil rights struggles and what slavery was all about, while others certainly are anxious about us keeping the virtues of our system and clearly articulating those. So this is very important for us to collectively, with the people's help, make our best judgments about where we want to have emphasis, what's important to expose our young people to. You will never get 100% of people to agree on what those topics and what that balance is. There are important catches, like, we are a republic, not, sort of facts, but so much of this is about emphasis, interpretation, where we want to expose kids to what different phenomenons have been part of our history and social studies. And it's up to us as a board and as a state to do it as thoughtfully and with get that balance as good as we can get it in terms of what's helpful to provoke critical thinking and help young people make up their own minds about what history means, and to share with them information that allows them to do that. So I just want to caution us, social studies is so different, and that's why you're going to get these very different, sometimes warring viewpoints. Is there too much freedom in here or not enough freedom? Too much multiculturalism, not enough. So it is different in character from the other disciplines. And we have to do and it's our job to get as much input. I'm glad we're taking the time to do that, and do this as thoughtfully about what we want our young people to be exposed to, concepts, ideas, experience, and help them learn to make up their own minds about what it means and its implications.
Eileen, please.
I wasn't at as many hearings as I felt I should have been, but I have to applaud the staff because in the past, I've been on the board for 12 years, and all of this effort to develop standards has been internally focused. It's done by K-12 teachers, it's done with staff, it's coordinated, people look at national models or use them depending upon the state of our current standards. But never before has the level of transparency that you folks have generated for this been attempted. And I'd like to say that it's a big win for the ability of people to interact with us. Of course, that exposes some other interesting issues, because as people have come forward, one of the things that the standards development process in the country doesn't have is a way to do academic review or peer review, or something that gets you to a spot where you say, okay, now that I've heard from Fordham that we have standards that don't work, we've gone out and we've done this. How do you get that interesting outside perspective that might provide that 26% of dissenters with a focus that really works? I noted when I was looking at the Fordham Science Review in 2012 that one of the things that they said about our existing science standards, which we're changing today, was that it was as if somebody had not taken a cohesive editing look at the entire K-12 package, that they didn't make sure the progressions worked all the way through. It's different for social studies, but one of the things that you're trying to address is that very thing. In the past, I remember we had social studies reviewed by Indiana University in 2006. Fordham isn't doing this now. We can't turn to the federal government. We wouldn't want to if we could, because our standards are state standards, and the federal government has no right or ability to interfere with those. Our districts are dealing with curriculum once we design them. But I guess I would raise the question of, is there any extra step that other states are going through once they have used their teachers and their resources to make sure that the academic progression of learning is comprehensive and thorough, and that all of the new questions that are being raised in this age of the internet have been at least looked at, even if they can't be resolved. And I agree with John. We're never going to find 100% agreement on what should be in these standards, but I think that making sure that they teach children what they need to know, which was an issue, a huge issue with science. We had excellent material inside the standards, but you couldn't necessarily get a graduate, according to Fordham, who'd had enough learning in anything besides chemistry to really make college a simple entry opportunity. But thank you so much, because we don't have the people internally to do this. Our staff is really good, and we found out that some of them are terrific teachers, and they can get in front of an audience with a lot of questions and find a way to bring them all into a good moment. Not necessarily an agreement, but in a better spot. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We will look into that.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I wanted to thank you and everybody here for taking the time to do this. It's very critical, and getting all this input is actually very valuable. And some of the suggestions that I've read seem completely off the wall, but some seem very helpful. So I think it's a good thing to take our time. I agree with that. I agree with John on different interpretations. I've just been reading a really fascinating book about how we got the Constitution that we got. It's called The Quartet, and it says it was really the efforts of 4 men who managed to do that despite all the problems that arose. We talk about the founding fathers, Washington, Madison, John Jay, and Madison, Washington, John Jay. There was another one, 4th one. I can't think of them right now. But it was they fought for a strong central government. It was very interesting because the states all wanted to be individual countries. They wanted to be individual states, and the Articles of Confederation were. They did that to fight the war, and the war was over, so they wanted to go back to being individual states. And the four leaders said that we'll never have a country if we don't have a strong central government. It was really fascinating. Book by Joseph Ellison, well done. So that's an interpretation. Other people will probably disagree with it, but it seemed very, very convincing to me. So anyway, what you're saying is
And
people
there's another
interpret
book
things
by Beard
differently.
saying the Founding
Right.
Fathers were all about Marxist perspective, saying they were all about continuing their economic monopoly on the powers of the economy in America.
So I think it's
What do you
great that we're
think?
taking the time to review everything and put it in perspective.
Thank you. Richard?
Appreciated John's comments there. To sum it up, there's not the consensus among the professionals in social studies comparable to what we've seen in English language arts, math, and science. So this has been a challenge. Trying to come up with social studies standards has been a challenge for decades. I have, frankly, 2 concerns in the present moment. One is that the current standards have only been in effect 8 years, and that means that nobody in the K-12 system has actually seen it through. And the other concern is the low rates of those who have been meeting the standards, and to change again. I don't worry about kids at the top. I think they'll probably do pretty good, whatever standards we have, because those kids are on fire for learning and they teach themselves. So it's the kids at the bottom that will suffer the most where there is change. And that's what gives me a lot of pause on this particular issue, and I have some parallel concerns with the science standards as well. Now, you've mentioned that in some sense the new social studies standards are a revision of the GLICs. From 8 years ago, could you maybe put a ballpark percentage? I mean, is this 20% changed or 50% changed, or we eliminated?
I'm turning to Jim.
Okay, all right.
How much change?
The instructions for all of the committees was to make no more than 10% changes, but we're talking about social studies people, so I would suggest it's more like 15%.
Okay.
And then too, Dr. Z, it does also matter, was it a major change, a minor change, and so forth.
Yeah. And related to that, then, how will our past testing of these give us any insight as to instructional improvement for reaching the revised standards?
It can.
Okay.
Name, please.
Also, I just want to bring it up publicly, but for those of us who were treated to Bob Bain's Bananas lecture on Friday, I'm sorry, Bob is probably one of the more gripping lecturers I've ever met, and he has a way of reducing things to the absurdity that you need to take a second look. The essence of the discussion was doing things the same way never results in change. So his comments on the need for a really thoughtful assessment that provoked the kind of discriminating test responses that would show that children were actually learning and thinking is really important. And it's not, I just want to bring it up because I understand the need to get the social studies standards in place. But I think that any discussion of trying to move to more sophistication in the standards, unless it's matched by the kind of tests that we know children need to take, will be problematic.
We would concur with you from Office of OEII, and we are working with the assessment folks on our ability to deliver that, which is one of the questions we have to grapple with. That is an expensive proposition, but one that we think any assessment needs to take a look at not doing multiple choice and true and false and that sort of thing, and not making that the preponderance of the test. And I did enjoy his comments about helping teachers understand how to develop good assessments at the classroom and school level. I thought that could be very meaningful and very helpful to the classroom teacher and the profession as a whole.
Then one last comment, which is that I'm getting letters from social studies teachers or experts who were involved initially in this process or are looking at it from the outside, who do not feel that it is what we should be putting this much energy into to do to force teachers to change again on a tweaking basis when there are some substantive issues that haven't been dealt with well. I don't have the expertise to know what that means. But I hear the question, and since we're listening to the questions from the public and the legislature, I would ask that we reopen that you meet with people from outside the process to see what exactly it is that's unsettling to them. And particularly because we're asking once again to have teachers make changes, let's make sure that the changes are not only appropriate for children, but essential for a better understanding for the next 7 to 8 years, because that's about when we're going to review these again. I'm worried that in the interest of only tweaking, I'm worried that we're not really fixing. And back in 2006, when that review was done by any university, it was never entered into the public record. We treated it as an advisory paper, but there were some serious considerations then about whether or not we were parallel to other states in how we approach social studies. And since there's only Fordham, which is actually did Fordham review, I'm trying to remember their social studies. Nothing, yeah. So we don't have any guidance at all, and I don't know what other documents there are from the outside that might have looked at our standards against other states. I don't know how we do that.
For that.
I know.
That's a good question.
Yep.
I thank the board for very thoughtful, good comments. Appreciate it. The last item on the committee of the whole agenda is presentation on safe and supportive schools. Staff from the Coordinated School Health and Safety Program Unit at the Michigan Department of Education have just completed a 5-year U.S. Education Department grant working with 22 priority high schools to improve the conditions for learning and academic achievement. Results from the grants are available and will be highlighted. The School Health Committee is involved in this work, and that includes Pam Pugh, Kathleen Strauss, and Richard Zile, who serve on the School Health Committee. So the next step will be to build on the lessons we've learned here, and to present to us today is Kyle Grant, Deputy Superintendent, Administration and School Support Services, and Marla Moss, Director of School Support Services.
Good morning, everybody. We're excited to be here to share the fruits of some hard work over the last 5 years by some committed individuals. Before we get started, I'd like to just take the opportunity to have our staff here at the department and some of the excellent partners we work with stand to be recognized as folks that were instrumental in helping to achieve these outcomes. So if you have to just stand for a quick second, please. On your right, Kat. I'm back here too. Thank you. We really appreciate it. I'm glad you're here today. So, this was a labor of love. It's funny, I was thinking back in the spring of 2010, the U.S. Department of Education was interested in funding states to look at essentially what turned into be pilots of some sorts of how schools and how school climate and the culture of the learning culture impacts student outcomes. And so they funded 11 states to do this work. We were one of them, and it was we received $25 million, and we had 4 weeks to write the grant and only 25 pages to do it with. So $1 million a page was an awful heavy burden to make sure we wrote succinctly. But we were successful in doing it. And again, the real focus of the work was how does the learning environment, how does kind of health and safety issues affect student outcomes. And the framework on the slide is really what we worked within: engagement of students, staff, and parents. What's the physical and emotional safety environment like in those buildings, and then what's the environment in the classroom, the overall health and wellness environment of the school. Those were the areas that we focused on in our work.
So as Kyle mentioned, we were one of 11 states to receive this grant. MDE received the highest score on the application, and we also got the most funds.
Sounds good.
MDE provided programming over a 4-year period for high schools with predominantly underserved adolescent population who were below their requirements for adequate yearly progress. This slide shows the 22 high schools who participated in the grant. We initially invited 51 schools to join us. Only 31 of those schools indicated interest, and then only 24 demonstrated readiness to change and to work with us.
So it's the two goals of the grant that we received from the feds is really one of the main priorities was to create a data management system that could help essentially drive local decision making. So with resources being scarce, how do you best target the resources you have to address these needs? We were fortunate that we already had this in place due to a previous federal grant that helped us build the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth, which many of the board members are familiar with. So we didn't have to spend time creating that nor spend resources from the grant to do that. Many of the other 10 states did have to do that. That allowed us to provide more funding to schools, which again, more programming, more services for kids. So again, with the concept of kind of using data to drive decision-making around these health and safety issues, the three kind of main survey tools that we use, and the beauty of all three of them is they're free and available to schools, not only schools that participate in the grant, but now through these resources, we're able to allow to build these systems to allow all schools to have access to them. So again, the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth is one we've been before the board before. It's for grades 7, 9, and 11. If those of you who are familiar with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, it really kind of takes that mindset. It's a combination of kind of behaviors around health and safety behaviors of students, as well as kind of the Hawkins kind of a lot of risk and protective factors. So what are the risk and protective factors that students have in their school and their community environment, and how that impacts their behaviors. The Michigan School Climate Assessment Inventory is one that we used resources of the grant to help develop. We bought kind of the framework of it from another state and then Michiganized it to help meet some of our needs. And the beauty of this and the Belief Free Schools survey is that it's not only for students, but it also takes into account teacher and staff voice, as well as student and parent voice in that concept. So it allows administrators and school staff to really get a holistic view of what people feel about their climate, not only the overall learning environment, but also specifically related to bullying. From that, when we wrote the grant, our focus was what are the research-based practices and programs that we would want schools to implement with fidelity over this period of time, and we have the resources to help support them to do it right. So on the left, you see the bolded column is the mandatory. So all of the 22 schools that participated were required to work in these areas. So work within a coordinated school health model, a framework of how you bring partners together to address all needs of students and parents. And then the three underneath, this school mental health, the eliminating barriers to learning, our parent engagement efforts with our partnership with Parent Action for Healthy Kids, and working with the Neutral Zone on building student engagement or youth advisory councils in all the schools were ones that were required of all of our schools. And then the row on the right was the elective programming, which was really driven by, again, the individual schools' data and what they saw as needs in their school. And how to address them. So I think one thing to look at, and something the board should be proud of, is in each of those categories, the board has adopted policies on what they believe schools should be doing. So we were able to support kind of the board's policy framework in our efforts in this grant.
So here's some information on one of the requirements that they could select, the restorative justice. 11 of 22 S3 schools implemented the restorative justice practices in their buildings. And out of those schools, there were 23,340 instructional hours, or 3,591 days saved due to these practices. That's really quite amazing. And we know this is because behaviors that would otherwise have resulted in suspension and expulsions were resolved using these restorative justice practices. So that way the kids could stay in school. So here's some notable results at the end of the 4th year of the grant. 30% of the S3 schools received reward status. 52% of the schools reported a decrease in bullying incidents on school grounds, and 65% of the schools increased their graduation rates. Now, what we do know is that when schools feel safer and when they have less violent incidents, their graduation rates increase. So if you only take one thing away today, this is what we want you to take away. That we were able to determine that when you focus on school climate and conditions for learning, especially focusing on relationships, there is improvement in academic outcomes.
With that, coming around is our kind of final grant report that highlights the successes in a more detailed way and allows essentially links to, for not only you, but others, other school districts. As we think about how we get to a top 10 and 10 state, there are lessons that we learned through this process that from these high schools who are great partners with us that can be applied to other priority schools in our state, especially at the high school level. Again, without the folks in this room, without the caring adults in those high schools over the last 4 years, we would not have been able to see the successes we have. I mean, just the restorative practices and the number of days of suspension that's been saved over the last 4 years is huge when you think about teachers being able to teach and students being able to learn. Ties very nicely into the board's work on the youth justice partnership that we've been working with the State Court Administrator's Office on and Health and Human Services. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Certainly some exciting news there to celebrate some good work done and some successes not only academically but graduation rates. One of the issues, though, we all understand is an ongoing problem, even though I think we've come a long way, is bullying and the work we still have to remain in bullying. And John, I know you wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to note in this context, I mean, we had that, I was going to talk about President's report. We had that survey that MSU did, which reminded us that we still have all too many incidences in too many schools of bullying. And as Brian said, as while we've made a lot of headway, I did share the results here that there are purposeful strategies and things you can do in school to reduce those numbers in these demonstration schools as being one example. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to figure out how do we extend or make next steps in terms of effective ways to create the culture that diminishes bullying and improves learning outcomes and other features like the kind of programs that are featuring here. So I hope as our look at top 10 and strategies for improving learning and outcomes, we'll be looking at how we support the spread of these types of efforts, which, good to see that some things can really work.
Michelle and I, from the board end, are both on the Lieutenant Governor's Task Force on Special Education, and I've only been on one conference call. Have you been on two?
I was present at the meeting, too.
Okay, great. So one of the things that dawned on me as I was listening, sometimes it's easier to listen when you're not looking at faces, but it really struck me that anti-bullying and restorative justice practices have a lot to do with positive behavior support. And we don't articulate that. I mean, I take it for granted that all of these initiatives which provide context for teachers that's a safe, supportive, learning, universal learning, focused structure for children takes the emphasis off of adults who aren't able to control children, adults who aren't quite sure what to do, and puts it, as an organic thing that's supposed to grow out of kids. So I would no matter what the outcome is, I think we need to start looking at that as a vocabulary, a way of expressing things, because I don't believe you can get to the Band-Aid approach, which is, well, that'll fix this. And if you just choose restorative justice, suddenly you'll have positive behavior support. I'd be interested in finding out how many of the schools that chose restorative justice have positive behavior support knowledge. Because my guess is that they don't. And then the question, too, is whether or not they have anti-bullying policies. But doing all of that as a cohesive way of approaching kids would make a huge difference.
Yep, Michelle?
Yeah, just following up on that, with the task force, there's some discussion about how to, in discussing alternatives to restraints, seclusion, things like that, and to look at positive supports for restorative justice, and trying to get a handle on how, like, financially, or what organizations or state entities you could tap into to do this. And so with your experience and with this grant, and maybe the answer isn't now, but what recommendations you might have to take the work that you've done on restorative justice, assuming that it connects somehow with this positive supports, how to expand that across the state, and sort of what are the obstacles that might be there? Is there financial obstacles to this? Because some of what I hear actually from my own husband is a special ed teacher, is because there's so many demands on teachers. It's seen as one more demand, but they don't have the resources to just even make that change over. So I would love to have a better understanding, and I think it might be helpful to our task force to have a better understanding of the success that you've had, how to expand that, how to use the knowledge that you've gotten, and how to expand that. So.
I'd love to come to the task force or present that in some way, shape, or form, or share information. I mean, one kind of quick response to that, specifically around their sort of practices, is through the work of through the grant, we work with the dispute resolution centers throughout the state that help do some of the training for school staff on what restorative practices are. So I think to your question about resources, it's kind of twofold. I think there's one level of that doesn't take a lot of money on training teachers, not to be the sole fixer of problems, but to understand them and to be able to plug into resources to address them through the eliminating barriers for learning, our mental health kind of approach with this grant. Lauren did the majority of the trainings, but we've trained 800 plus teachers on what are some of the signs and symptoms and how it manifests itself in behavior in the classroom. Again, for them to know, not necessarily to fix the problem, but to be able to know what's going on and then try and tap into resource to address it. So I think it's a little bit of both, and the training aspect I think is a resourcing that we can overcome. The problem is when you some communities in our state have better access to more resources than others. So you can prepare that teacher, you can prepare that administrator, but then when it comes time to actually try and find mental health supports for some communities have a better access, have a better structure than others. So I think that's the rub.
Thank you. I'll follow up.
Kathleen, then Pam?
Well, this really confirms what we did with trying to reduce suspension and expulsions. It gives backup to what we wanted to get across with the policy we passed. So if we, as Michelle said, if we ramp this up more, that beyond the 22 schools, that would be a big step in the right direction. With, as you say, Eileen, with restorative justice and other positive behavior supports, which we've been pushing for a long time, but this gives the data to really support what we've been doing. I think if you can expand it, it'd be great. Any chance of getting another grant?
Well, these lessons have been, I mean, we've written for other federal grants through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration and USAID that focus on aspects of this work. So we have gained additional resources that are going to allow us to expand. One of our grants focuses on doing some of this work at a county level, which is a huge undertaking when you undertake that, different districts, different policies, but working with ISDs in that area. So now, is there going to be a grant that's going to allow us to do this statewide? Probably not. But
Can we ramp it up even without another grant? Take it to the associations, schools, principals, and take it, give the results of this, and say, this is what you should be doing in your school, without a traditional grant.
Lauren's doing that.
I'm on the road.
Yes?
The state management team is a combination of our state agency partnership to extenuate this work that we've done in S3. So it involves Active Helping Kids, Student Voice, and it's the state and the locals partnering together, the ISD level and the local level, to continue to look at fulfilling this.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's good.
All right, Pam?
Thank you for this report, and this is good news. And also, thank you, John, for sharing that the bullying report from Wayne State. And I was able to use it over the weekend for parents who have lost their children to violence, some of the data from there. So thanks for forwarding that. My question is more around the surveys, the available surveys and the data. And I know that usually the MyFi data is released in descriptive statistics. And in order for communities to be able to better evaluate and measure, it would be good. We've talked about how can we look at correlations between behaviors and outcomes, or descriptive statistics or demographics and outcomes, and wondering, have you all had those conversations here? Have you all gotten that feedback from local communities, and if there's a way to put the data out in that way?
So yes, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data is put out there public as a CD's, Centers for Disease Control funded thing that is done every other year that, kind of is our benchmark for a lot of things. The MyFi data specifically, the concern or the rub comes with locals is it's really their data. And so when administrators and superintendents agree to want to take this on and look at, what the needs really are in their district, sharing that publicly, by at a district level can be a challenging conversation for the school district and the community at times. So our mantra to this point has really been, it's the school's data to use, and we've got great examples across the state where the school districts have kind of gotten over that hump and are sharing it with the CMHs, with the local health departments, and really using that data and making decisions not only just in the school but as a community based on it. We've been reluctant to this point to share that data as a statewide, because the next question comes is, well, whose district participated, what were their numbers like, and then it really, in our opinion, and from work with our experience with schools, stifles that conversation locally, because you have people that are less willing to participate because they don't want to be, their data to be compared in papers or in other places. So our mantra has really been working with school districts to facilitate that conversation on a local, regional basis, using the YRBS data as a statewide benchmark that we share.
And is it any way, like from a statewide level, that you can release the data in terms of correlations, like a student that has this characteristic is more likely to have this outcome? Have we looked at releasing the data or analyzing the data in that way that helps to support some of the programming?
We've done that with our RBS data on academic outcomes, so we've correlated that, and that stuff, that kind of correlation and data is on our website.
Okay.
Again, we haven't gone that far with MyFi data yet, at least as a statewide level. I'm sure Kim and her team and others can talk about great examples of local districts that have done that work, but we just have not done that on a statewide basis yet.
Having been in the classroom as long as I did, the teachers are always looking for ways where we can have a safe and orderly classroom, or safe and orderly building, district. So all of these different methods are, I think, well accepted by all educators. Now, in looking at the list here of safe and supportive schools, how do they become part of the safe and supportive schools with the department?
How do they receive the grant? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do they apply?
They did. So based on the resources we had, we wanted to make sure we provided schools with enough dollar amount to make a difference. So we, in our state, when we looked at it had to be focused on at the high school level. That was the requirement for the Fed. So when you looked at our lowest performing high schools, there was a certain number of them. And as Marla mentioned earlier, we essentially threw it out there for all of them to want to apply and be part of that. I think there was like 33, 32.
31.
So of that, only 24 applied to want to do this, and then that's how we got down to 22 because 2 of the schools dropped out when they saw the requirements, like they just weren't ready or had the capacity to do what we were going to require of them. So it was open to all the high schools that were in the bottom or on our persistently low achieving list at the time, but only that number of them applied.
Okay,
Kathleen?
thank you. I have another question. Has there been any comparison or reports from the other states that got the grant and what they did? And did they find similar results? Or did they do the similar things and find similar, or did they do different things?
So the other 10 states, actually ironically, Weiser's comment did focus on PBIS. So we were the only state that offered a menu of interventions for schools based on their data. All of the other states just focused on PBIS. And to answer your question, some of the schools that weren't in the Q2 did have PBIS already going in their buildings, and so this work kind of compounded or complemented the work that they were already doing. PBIS has really primarily been in elementary and middle school, so for it to be in a high school was kind of rare. But it's moving in that direction, and it seemed to really work well in the high schools that were using it. All of the states have to turn in a federal report, but I have not seen any beautiful reports like we've made in Michigan going around in the other states. So I haven't seen anything from them. I'm sure they have to report to their federal officer just like we do, but I have not heard any results or seen anything like what we've presented to you.
And we were the only state with parent engagement. We were the only state that had a parent engagement.
It was optional, and we chose it, and none of the other states did. So the feds were like thrilled that we did parent engagement, and we've had great success with that.
Have you gotten any feedback from the Department of U.S. Department of Education on the report?
I know during the process of the 4 or 5 years of the grant, I mean, we were always held up as the golden child, so I'm hoping that's still the case.
Yeah, we sent this information in snail mail and electronically to them, and then we're doing their typical, the federal requirements are required to do, but we sent this to them, and of course, we got emails of rave reviews back from them, so they were very pleased with the work that we've done as our team.
Eileen, please.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to always bring up, because it was one of the most devastating things I've ever seen, the Kalamazoo mom who lost her son to seclusion and restraint in 2000. It was while I was in Slovakia, so I think it was 2004. And when we put the policy in place for positive behavior for PBIS, it was a high school student, a graduating high school student who was killed, not an elementary school child. Although the things that happen in elementary school are still really daunting. It's unbelievable that things go on in Michigan and in other states. So I would again pull this whole thing back together. I see a lot of heads nodding, but I think that this light bulb, it needs to be our discussion, the way that we approach it, because if you have an elementary school system that honors children at the center with universal education and safety, then yeah, I would anticipate it would keep on spreading up, because the kids themselves will know that that's how things should be. But that's not the same as having adults feel like when they're threatened and they're in an unusual situation, that they have the tools they need to resolve it. And that's the part that, the kids, bless them, are resilient. It's the adults who are stressed and don't know what to do when they're faced with a challenge and who behave badly, and then there's irreparable damage to a child.
All right, thank you very much. Next item on the committee of the whole agenda is discussion regarding grant criteria. There are 3 grant criteria that are being presented. Is there any question on any of those? Seeing none, we are ahead of schedule, so it's the pleasure of the board. We can either recess earlier or we can start public comment for the next 20-25 minutes. Public comment? All right, we will move on to public comment to give people opportunity to speak now. so they don't have to wait till 1 o'clock. But we will be adjourning at noon, so we may not get through them all.
I was going to go in the order I received them, but is Melanie Curtis, is she here? Right. She, okay, just so you know, if I call a name and you're not here, we'll go back to you when we come back, because this is unexpected that we'll start now. So I will let you know who the first speaker is, and then the person who will be speaking next. You'll have 5 minutes to speak, and if you have any handouts, if you will just come to the table where you've seen the presenters come and give the closest person your handouts. We'll be happy to pass them around the board table. The board's policy is that they do not engage in a back and forth conversation, but they're happy to hear anything that you've come to tell them. So the first speaker is Tawana Simpson, and Tawana will be followed by Herman Davis. Is Tawana here? And I'm going to put a timer up here. It'll take me just a minute to, whoa, look at that. Snap your fingers and there it is. Thanks, Marty. Cool.
Thank you for coming. And
What I have for the board here is a copy, one copy of our Title 6 complaint, and I have these flyers where you can, if you'd like to get more copies of our complaint, you can find it at the website there.
So we will be ready whenever you are.
Hello, my name is Tawana Simpson. I'm a member of the Detroit Board of Education, and I'm here to ask this honorable board to support the Detroit Board of Education and to understand that what we need in Detroit is an audit. PA 436 calls for after 18 months of an emergency manager that an audit is performed. We have had emergency managers for some form of emergency manager now for 16 years, and since PA 436 has been in place, every 17 months and 29 days we get a new emergency manager. So therefore, we have not had an opportunity to have an audit to understand the changes that the emergency manager is making inside of DPS. And I feel that it's very unfair for any coalition or even the governor himself to come up with a plan for DPS when we don't know what is going on, what has happened in the last 16 years. So I bring you a copy of our Title VI complaint that we filed that addresses 22 different violations that's been going on in our school district. And I ask this honorable body to support the Detroit Board of Education in demanding an audit before any plan is put upon the District of Detroit Public Schools.
thank you very much for being here and sharing.
And our next speaker is Herman Davis, followed by William Davis.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Honorable. Good seeing you again, Mr. Whitson.
See you. Thank you for being here.
It's indeed a pleasure to come before you because, as you know, we have a lot of problems in Detroit. And the Board of Education, thank you. At your leisure, please take a look at this. This is a resolution that the Board of Education passed as it relates to some of the issues that we're facing. And we look forward to you identifying with us those issues of democracy. Democracy is important. I noticed in one of the former, it talked about America and the things that we look for to be able to have our voice heard and counted when we go to the polls. And we've found in Detroit for the last 16 years, we haven't had that option. We sit back, can't do nothing about anything that's happening. We need to have the ability to serve our constituents, to provide a great education for them, I had the opportunity of serving on the board back in the late 70s and 80s when I was a part of the committee that brought on Dr. Arthur Jefferson, if you remember. He was the longest serving superintendent in Michigan. We want to do that again. I want to be a part of the revitalization of public education and bring our schools back to where they should be. We can do it. I know we can. Back in Dr. Arthur Jefferson's time, we had schools that were unbelievable. All over the country, they were coming to see what we were doing because we had our classrooms moving forward. Give us that opportunity again. We need, as was stated by Tawana Simpson, we need an audit to identify where our money has been spent. A lot of it has been spent recklessly, and we need to restore our district. So please help us make that happen. Great seeing you. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for being here and sharing.
And the next speaker is William Davis, followed by Tracy Arnold.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. We have a problem, and I think that y'all can help in this problem. True, one of the groups I'm the president of, Taxpayer Residents Unite for 21st Century Education, principally concerned about the fact that the taxpayers and the voters, principally we're talking about today about Detroit and a number of communities, and we're alarmed and concerned that it might spread to a lot more communities. As you can see from some of our handouts, the city of Detroit has been harmed, and it continues to be harmed. Separately, I'm also the president of the Detroit Active Retired Employee Association. That's a group that's still involved in federal court relating to the bankruptcy about our pensions being cut. You know, we are going down a slippery slope here in Michigan that, you know, you're attacking pensioners, you're attacking kids, you know, a number of groups are being systematically challenged and pushed against the wall. You know, it's almost like, you know, during a heyday in Nazi Germany, but the Nazis, they went after various different groups. You know, we cannot and will not allow that. I'm the president of True of Michigan. You know, we are concerned about what's going on in Detroit, but we're concerned about what's going on all over the state of Michigan. We also have people throughout the country, but principally, you know, we are looking at the fact that, you know, teachers and parents are being retaliated against and have no say in what's going on in the city of Detroit as it relates to the public schools. You know, we're also concerned about the massive deficits. These deficits, you know, before emergency manager came in, and we've had emergency managers under Republicans, Democrats, and Republicans, so it's not limited to a particular party. But, you know, it seems to be getting worse and worse. But, the city of Detroit public school system had a surplus. The city of Detroit public schools was like in the mid-range academic-wise before the state took over. Since state involvement, that level has dropped tremendously. The debt has went from a surplus to a massive debt, and we believe from our people that the debt is much more higher than was being publicly spoke about. So, also contributing to that and contributing to like my pension cuts and could contribute to other communities' pension cuts and other loss of services is the fact that when you have an emergency manager in and they arbitrarily close schools without community involvement, property values drop. And, the property values in the city of Detroit, like so you start closing one school, the property value drop. You close another school, the property value drops even more. As schools close, people, parents say, I can't send my kid to school. I can't plan on that because we don't even know if the school is going to be open. The governor's school, the EAA, Detroit schools are not doing great, but they're doing even horrible. They're even doing even worse. That is a waste of $50 billion a year. As a tax-paying resident of the state of Michigan, I think we need some major changes. Also, we should not have to, we should not have to file Title VI complaints as it relates to what's going on in Flint. We have, and we also included the city mayor that lost his job. We should not have to initiate stuff with the federal government. Y'all should not force us to only look at the only viable option if local people have no control. We should not have to go outside and push a recall for the governor because the taxpayers in our communities do not have the right that they should have. We have a revolution that was started because no representation. Are y'all trying to push another revolution here? Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Davis.
Tracy Arno, did I say your name correctly?
Arno, Tracy Arno.
Arno, okay.
I'm the Vice President of TRUE, and I'm also a Detroit Public School teacher. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I have a few handouts that I would like to give to you. Number one, the first one being is the handout of what the governor wants and what we, can I keep one of those? Sure. And what we want as a group from TRUE. What we are asking for, we're asking for voter empowerment. We're asking for a headly adjustment. We are asking for the restoration of teacher pay. We are also asking for the return of the classic music of Motown. We all know that Detroit is the Motown capital of the world. Great music came out of Motown. I'm also giving you a copy of, I need one of those. I just gave you all my copies, I'm sorry. I gave you two. That's not yours. Apparently I've walked off with, that's mine too. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll give you some of these in just one moment. Okay, excuse me. And as you can see, not only do we want that, we want science and technology, safe transportation, after-school tutoring, and more teacher health options. That's what we want, and that's what we're asking for today here. Also, in addition, I must have set this down back there. Maybe Tawana can help me out with this. The true goals and objectives. I'd like to go over those with you right now. Our goals and objectives are the mission of hundreds of taxpayers was inspired to, in part, by mandate from Baxter Jones, to parents, community leaders, voters, and concerned citizens to focus on the needs of our children. Answering this mandate, together we demanded the academic affairs and budgets of our schools be returned to the governing body of representatives elected by the people and for the people who want to accomplish the following goals and objectives. One, we want to provide the highest quality of education to the Detroit children by restoring the music, arts, science program, physical education. We also want to, I'm going to move to number two, we want to restore the school budget by demanding that the state repay the Detroit taxpayers $2.1 billion in damages caused by state authority. Three, we want to hire and retain experienced and qualified teachers and support staff by full restoration of salary. Four, we want to reverse and prohibit and apologize to the teachers for the state contracts which forced, which has forced the teachers' pay and salary down in the district, and it has forced teachers to relieve the district or resign because they cannot afford to stay. Five, we want to repair and restore positive and cohesive relationships with all of our collective bargaining units. Six, provide 21st century technical and vocational training. Seven, to provide safety of Detroit students by full restoration of common sense principles which were relaxed and ignored during Snyder control. 8, immediate and directly grant full restoration of the same democracy of Detroit citizens which any other Americans enjoy by giving parents, students, and taxpayers and neighbors a voice in their community. 9, to protect persons with disabilities in compliance with the spirit and the intent of ADA. And we also want to restore the community trust through transparency of the operating of Detroit Public Schools and the reestablishment of public school and the cornerstones of our neighborhoods. And we've added 3. There's an addendum to the true goals and objectives. We demand that an audit for DPS before any other structural changes are made. And we also demand that the EAA schools be returned to DPS. And we demand that the public who consumed water in Flint, whether teacher or resident, be given free lead blood testing to make sure that their health is in good health. In addition, Ms. Simpson, I'm going to read something from Ms. Simpson as well. The Governor Snyder's management of schools in Michigan through appointed managers or boards compromises public safety and opens the doors for corruption. Moreover, it potentially violates federal voting and civil rights laws, Department of Commerce millage contracts, and other safety protections. The DEC is un-American and discriminatory, with many federal investigations ongoing. The plan needs an audit to provide the taxpayers with peace of mind. The plan focuses only on who controls the money and not really enough on seeing Detroit's children as human beings. The plan turns them into commodities. As we know, it's all being traded on Wall Street and hedge funders and what they feel. Before any plan can be put into place for the good of the public, the tax-paying residents and the voters and the children must be acknowledged as citizens deserving representation, oversight, and the protections of transparency and checks and balances, which makes our nation's systems, governing system great. We do not need a new system of governance in our nation as proposed by the governor. The DEC is not American. And at this point, I'd like to mention to you that there is a potential that there's going to be a boycott on the state of Michigan by other states because we're affiliated with several hundred different groups, okay? And one being Go Left America is top, and they are affiliated with other hundreds of groups, and so another 49 states are looking at us, and they may boycott us.
We will call for a boycott.
Yes, we will call for a boycott.
All right, thank you very much for being here.
time.
Next is Beth Kabitsky for wanting to speak on science standards, and then the last speaker will be Jane Wilson.
Hello, my name is Beth Kabitsky. I'm the treasurer for the Michigan Association of Colleges of Teacher Education. I'm the associate dean. Whoops. I'll wait. I'll be less than 5 minutes, so don't worry about it.
Merch.
I'm going to be quick.
It's beeping at me.
So I'll be quick. And I'm also an associate professor of physics and astronomy at Eastern Michigan University, so I'm coming with lots of hats. And some of my colleagues that are much more eloquent than I am can talk about the specifics of the standards, and will be coming up probably after lunch today. So I came because I noticed that there was a concern about, are the universities ready to support candidates in teaching with these new standards? And I just want to make you rest assured that we are. Since the 2012, since the framework came out that was actually informed these standards, we've been incorporating these practices into our methods courses. So, and our candidates have already been very aware, not necessarily of the standards since they haven't been adopted yet, but of the theoretical framework that informs them. So one of the things that we've worked with are, not just at Eastern, but other institutions, we've worked together to try to help develop different ways of teaching these strategies with our students. And we've developed a network of support amongst each other. And that's one of the things I've been very impressed with, particularly with my new hat now as an associate dean, is how the colleges and teacher preparation programs work together when we come with these kinds of changes. So one of the things that I want you to be sure that at Eastern and the other programs across the state, that we're ready to support our teachers and have been supporting our teachers for the last 2 to 3 years, and they're ready to take on these standards. And that's all I have to say, so I'm quick.
Thank you, Beth.
All right.
Appreciate it.
I can see you all look very relieved.
The next speaker is Jane Wilson, and she will be
No, then we're done.
Okay, then we'll pick up with the rest of them following lunch.
Yes.
So, Jane Wilson.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Marshall, Michigan. I'm a retired teacher. I've been to a couple of these presentations by the MDE, And I wanted to mention to you, there were a couple of teachers that were seen leaving soon after the presentation started and were asked, well, why are you leaving? And they said, well, obviously, this is already a done deal. It's, nothing we can do. So they weren't going to waste their time staying for the presentation. I thought you should know that. I'm concerned because of lack of content and lack of balance in the science program. Both the science and social studies start right out at the kindergarten level with cause and effect. It's cause and effect all the way through, which the Fordham Institute is also concerned about. Neither gives a solid foundation of scientific or historical truth. The writers of these standards are taking advantage of young, pliable minds and guiding their investigations so they will come up with their desired conclusions so that the child will take their point of view. They're not giving this solid foundation. In science, for example, and this booklet is beautiful. It must have cost a fortune publishing it. And it's really nice. It's fun to think of young children as being scientists, pretending to be scientists and investigating things starting in the kindergarten level. But how can they come up with a good conclusion, a really true conclusion, if they have no scientific foundation to start with? They're not given this. I think it's important to teach children about the wonders and intricacies of their bodies as opposed to looking at worms and bugs. Okay, that's fine. But how much more important, and they're omitting, the systems of the body, the beautiful intricacies that God has built into our bodies, and how they function. The systems of the body, such as the circulatory system, the respiratory system, etc., are all omitted. My goodness, that's basic science, isn't it? Nutrition and microbiology concepts are omitted, which could teach children about bacteria and viruses and how to avoid sickness and having a good balanced diet and all of this kind of thing. Again, the Fordham Institute, too, is concerned about the lack of content. It's stressing here, well, we need hands-on science. Well, you know what, we already have that. We have math science centers in cities all around the state, and I know at least in Battle Creek, this math science center provides little packets or kits, if you will, for teachers to use for hands-on science in the classroom. I've used them, and they're wonderful. Why do we need to change? Chemistry there are a few chemistry standards, but they are very basic. There's not enough for a standalone science course, or chemistry course, I mean. Physics is just missing entirely. I wanted to give you a quote by Jennifer Helms, PhD, RN. She says the NGSS standards are replete with politically charged junk science. Just the fact that climate is mentioned 58 times while electrical circuit is mentioned only once should give you pause. According to Fordham, the NGSS standards aren't nearly as strong as the best of some states that some states have developed on their own. And I think we should look at those. We don't have to accept these standards. Fordham gives them a C in rating. There are states, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, and South Carolina, which have much higher standards that we could take a look at. And I know that this past summer, there's a group that have knowledgeable education people who have developed new standards that could replace this and the Common Core, which would be based on classical education And they are also age appropriate. I think cause and effect is not age appropriate, especially for children K through 8. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, for being here. All right, with that, we will be adjourning until 1 o'clock. We'll come back to order at 1 o'clock. Thank you.